So the title of today's sermon is Lord, Lord. And you can say it a lot of different ways. And even in Jesus' framing of this, or when he speaks of this here, I think he said it a couple of different ways. But we're going to end the series this morning on the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus summarizes and closes out his sermon. I'll be reminding you of some of the things that we've talked about along the way. And we're going to concentrate today, though, on Matthew 7. Really 21 through 29. But I'm going to go back to Matthew 15 and begin there. Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles, are they? So every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then, you will know them by their fruit. The fruit Jesus is speaking of here is the fruit of the Spirit. I'm not going to preach a great deal on it today, but I want to ask you one question. How many fruits of the Spirit are there? Jeremy was quick. There's one. There's only one fruit of the Spirit, and it has 9 characteristics, perhaps. But it's only one fruit. It's just like if you take an apple tree, it's going to produce only apples. Right? Now, those apples have different characteristics. If you have a tree that produces red apples, it will produce red apples. They'll be sweet. They'll have this texture. They'll have seeds inside the fruit. You see what I'm saying? There will be different characteristics of that apple. They'll have a certain smell to them. Different characteristics, but it's all one fruit. So we look at the fruit of the Spirit. What are the characteristics? Love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I'm going to tell you today, when we look at ourselves, if there's one of these characteristics that's missing from the fruit that we're producing, we've got a problem. It's not the fruit of the Spirit. Now, let's not say that all of these are going to be perfect, right? They're not. We're going to be lacking in some areas a little bit, and we need to work on those areas. We need to specifically work on them. It's just like when I refer to the apple tree. When the apple first comes on the tree, it's not red, right? It's green. It's not sweet. It's sour. There are a lot of different things that have to happen, right? First, it has to age. It can age on the tree or it can age off the tree if you pick it a little early. And there'll be a difference in the taste whether you allow it to age on the tree or off the tree. If you go and gather apples, not all of them are going to be at the same stage of ripeness, right? And depending on your situation, if you're a farmer, you're probably going to pick in bulk. So you're probably not too particular about it being just the perfect ripe fruit at that time, right? You're going to pick a bushel, so you're picking close, but not exact. You may have waited a day if you were just picking that particular apple to eat immediately, right? Because it's not at its perfect. So that's what I'm saying. We need to refine our fruit. We need to look at ourselves, and we need to see where we're lacking. If we're lacking in forgiveness or forbearance, then we need to examine that. We need to work on that aspect of our lives. Because when people look at us, we want them to see the fruit of the Spirit. We want them to see all of those characteristics, all at the same time. This person is loving, they're caring, they're gentle, right? We want them to see all of those things. So it's important that we consider that in ourselves. So I'll go on from there. Matthew 7, 21 through 23. I'm going to break it up today. I'm not going to read the whole passage that we're talking about. I'm going to read each section of the passage as I address it. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. But the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name did we not cast out demons? And in your name perform many miracles? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Leave me, you who practice lawlessness. You know, this may sound a little harsh, but when we really consider everything that God has done for us, what He asks of us, I don't think it is. How many of us come to God or seek Him when we're in immediate need? And when that need is taken care of, we turn away from Him again. Many of us at one time or another have done that to Him. It's not surprising to me, nor is it out of line to me for Him to say, I didn't know you. How many of us, when people come to us and they ask us for something and we help them, and then they turn away from us, and they do this over a period of time, time after time after time, does it not get a little old? You only come to me when you need me. And when there's not an immediate need, you have no use for me. It tends to hit us, right? Why would we expect God to always be there for us and us not having to do anything in return, not having to care or love or do His will? It's good for us to turn to Him in times of trouble. But we must stay with Him when things are going good. When everything's right in our lives, we must stay with Him and continue to walk with Him. Walk side by side with Him in good times and in bad. Verse 24 through 27. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house. And yet it had been founded on the rock. On them will be a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against the house. And it fell, and its collapse was great. When Jesus said, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them, He's talking about the words He was speaking in this very sermon. The words I just gave to you earlier in 15 through 20, and the words previous, all the way back from Matthew 5. Those who listen to my words and obey them. So I want to look back on some of the things Jesus said throughout this sermon. It started with Jesus going up on the mountain and finding that perfect place to speak and be heard. And He opened His mouth and began to speak, which was like saying, listen up. Listen up. these words I'm saying are important. They're the most important words you're ever going to hear. Listen. And Jesus began to clarify the word, saying, I didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And for I say to you, unless your righteousness far exceeds that of the Pharisees, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Just what he's saying, and not everyone who calls Lord, Lord will be saved. I want you to think about that. To me, what he's saying here is exactly what he said about the Pharisees. The Pharisees called on the Lord, but their hearts weren't right. And you see that over and over and over in Jesus' teaching, that they weren't where they needed to be. Yet they were serving in the temple. They were teaching the people, right or wrong. They weren't where they needed to be. So calling on the name of the Lord, 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 is not going to do it. We have to dedicate ourselves to Him. Then we see Him correct some misunderstandings. It's not just murder, but getting angry with your brother without a reason. That's a sin. It's not just physically committing a sexual act, but lusting after and entertaining the thought of an act with someone other than your spouse is committing adultery. Not just making false vows, but tying your word to a vow related to God, that's a sin. Your word is enough. What you speak should be truth always. An eye for an eye is not a minimum, but a maximum. Forgiveness and love are the commands. Don't show off your righteousness, but quietly let it be evident. Trust God in all things. Know that He loves you and will supply your needs. Seek Him in everything you do, and He'll always be by your side. Don't be judgmental, but treat others the way you want to be treated. And look inwardly to make corrections in yourself. You expect God to give to you, give to God. Give to those who belong to Him, which incidentally is everyone. Narrow is the path that leads to righteousness. To enter, we must follow the greatest two commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. So he's referring to all of these when he says, those who hear my words and obey them will enter into the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be a wise man who built his house on the rock. Sorry, I'm going backwards here. Jesus is telling us, follow Him. Follow Him. It's not a matter of calling on Him one day. We talked about it here a week or so ago, or a couple of weeks ago when I preached last. We talked about Amy Grant's song, Greater Than a Hallelujah, about the soldier in the foxhole receiving fire, and he's praying to God, right? That's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing, but it doesn't stop there. When the war's over and peace abounds and and there's no immediate troubles in your life, He still requires us to be there. Remember, Jesus called on us to surrender our flesh, to give up the flesh, to die to the flesh, to put it on the cross, and to be born again, to be born of Spirit. And He calls on us to transform, to change from fleshly beings to spiritual beings. Trusting in Him in everything that we do. It's all His. I love that song. The song they just sang right here. This life, take and do what you want with this life that is now yours. I've given it to you, God. You know, a lot of times we say, God, why did you do this to me? Why is my life this way? We got to remember we gave our lives to Him. It's not our life anymore. It's His life. To do with as He pleases. To do with whatever He needs to do to grow His kingdom, to glorify His name. It's a hard thing sometimes. Sometimes we want to hold on to this or we want to hold on to that. I'm not going to tell you I'm different than you because I run into these problems too. Every one of us has something that we try to hang on to, but it's not ours. And the quicker that we realize that and we turn it over to Him and we just surrender it and say, God, do with it what you want. You know, I'll talk to you about my father-in-law a little bit, and I don't know how many of you know exactly what's going on, and I'm not going to stand up here and talk a whole lot about it, but I will say this. Through the time that he has been hospitalized, through the time that he has been going through this agony of whether they're going to save his foot or whether they're not going to save his foot or whether they're going to have to go up his leg or wherever, if there's an amputation, where that might be or where this might be, through this time, he's gotten worn down. And he's gotten to a point, I don't care what they do anymore, I just want it over with. And we get to that point sometimes and we say, God, that's where we need to be in some cases because we just need to say, God, whatever it is that needs to be done, you do it. I'm through with it. I can't handle it anymore. It's not up to me and I can't take it. You know, I preached on this a couple of times and I'm going to go back to it today. If you look back on every patriarch in the Bible, every man that we admire for his dedication and for his faith, every one of them at one time or another said, Lord, I've had enough. You look at Elijah and he said, God, if you're going to treat me like this, take me today. Take me now. Paul said, I was distressed unto death. I was ready to be taken. I was ready to go. I'm done with this. And you know what's amazing? This happens in our lives too, but you know what's amazing about it? You look back on those stories in the Bible. You look at all of these men, and every time one of them got to that point and said, Lord, that's it. I can't take anymore. What happened? The Lord moved. He moved in a mighty way. He took them out of the situation that they were in. He gave them a peace. God was with them. That's greater than a hallelujah. When we surrender it all to Him. And that's what He requires of each and every one of us. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago when we talked about not only do we need to be willing to die for Him, we need to be willing to live for Him. And being willing to live for Him means doing what He calls us to do, even if we see a danger in it. Even if we see a hazard. Even if we see ridicule on the horizon. Even if we see embarrassment. If He calls us to do it, we need to step up. We need to step up. And not every time will things turn out the way you want them to. The way you expect them to. People say, well, but God said, if I just pray to Him, He'll take care of you, yes. But he won't give you the answer that you desire sometimes. People pray for life. But all of us are going to die. There comes a time, right, when God desires that of us. He desires us to move on and be taken away. When Jesus had finished these words, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. For he was teaching them as one who had authority, and not as their scribes. Finally, speak with authority. When God gives you utterance, speak it out boldly. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of getting a word wrong. You see me and Jeremy all the time. We'll stumble over something. We laugh at ourselves and we move on. But the thing is, God will use that in some way. What we do, if God's given you utterance, he will use whatever comes out of your mouth. And he will make it mean something to the person you're speaking to. And God won't steer you to say something falsely. He steers you to speak truth, honesty, love, kindness. I'm going to conclude today with call on his name today. But don't stop there. Call on his name tomorrow. Call on his name every day for the rest of your life. Walk with him. Talk with him. And I don't mean walk with him in a removed sort of way. I mean walk with him. He's right here. He's connected to you. He's inside you. Walk with him completely. Allow him to move you and to shape you into what you need to be, to direct your path. Call on him every day. And the door won't be just open to you. It'll be thrown off its hinges. It'll be wide open. And when you come into the kingdom, it won't be a silent entry. There'll be a parade for you. Can you imagine having a parade in your honor? I want you to think about this because the Bible tells us God and all of his angels celebrate. When we come to Jesus and we surrender ourselves, there is a celebration, a party in heaven. There's another party when you die. There's a party when you enter in. God finds it a pleasure. In Psalm 116:15 it says, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Precious. I want you to think about that. The next time you lose a loved one, and you know that they're heaven bound, think of that day of sorrow and grief in your family as a day of celebration for God and for your loved one. For they are finally united completely. God is welcoming them home. I think about this sometimes, and I think about my youth, and I look back with fond memories of things that happened in my youth, and I look at how much sometimes I would like to go home to that. But greater is the home that I have in heaven. Greater is the home that I have there than any home I have ever had in my life. Lydia can't take care of me the way God takes care of me. I can't take care of her the way God takes care of her. That is the greatest gift there is that eternal commitment by God to take care of you. That you belong to Him. That you have a seat at His table. He celebrates the surrender of your flesh. And He celebrates again upon its death. So, surrender today. We'll play a song of invitation. And I want to encourage you to give your life over. To call on His name today and every day. To continually call on Him. Continually be with Him in everything that you do. Have Pastor Jeremy come up. You need to give your life. If you've never surrendered to Christ, I pray that you will today. I pray that He is calling your name, that He is calling you forward, and I pray that you will surrender. If you've given your life, but you've fallen back, like I said, almost everyone, if not everyone in here at one time or another has called on the name of the Lord and then turned away from Him and had to return. There comes a time when you come back to Him and you never leave again. But sometimes it's a process. It takes a while. God is forgiving and loving and patient. And He will accept that. He welcomes you back into the fold. If you're looking for a baptism or a church home, we welcome that and we'll pray with you about it. Any other things that you need prayer for, we'll be here for you this morning.